The United States welcomed Venezuelans into this country, saying the situation in Venezuela was too unsafe, too unstable for so many of them to stay. But seemingly overnight, something changed after Nicolas Maduro was arrested and brought to the United States to face charges. Venezuelans in D.C. celebrated that moment here, joining Venezuelans across the country celebrating in their cities. But now, weeks later, Venezuelans are being told they can go back to Venezuela. And it seems there's so much uncertainty.
I just kept hearing my phone vibrating. And when I grabbed it, I saw what was happening and obviously couldn't go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Maduro being out of power, this would mean a transition and change, like the position would take over. At least that was what they were hoping at that morning.
For a lot of Venezuelans, it was really tough to see how your family members just kept losing weight because there was no food.
It's cruel, it's unfair. Many of them feel betrayed.
Initially, there was this feeling for Venezuelan people of happiness, but then I think reality quickly took over.
Pew Research says there are more than 1.2 million Venezuelans in the United States, tens of thousands of them here in the DMV. It's a population that's more than doubled since 2019, the fastest growing Hispanic population in the United States. Many Venezuelans came to the U.S. under a Biden-era program granting temporary protected status, TPS, but that protection's now been ended. DHS says Venezuelans can now go home to a country that they love. It's not that simple. And for more context, we turn to our colleagues at T44, one who covered celebrations and protests here in Washington after the U.S. action, and another, their anchor, Alberto Pimienta, who grew up there. This is For More Context, your seat in the News 4 newsroom for a conversation about how we check facts, fight for answers, break stories, and hold each other accountable.
I just kept hearing my phone vibrating, and I wanted to sleep a little more, so I stood up. I was not super happy. I wanted to take the phone to a different room because I was thinking, what's going on? And when I grabbed it, I saw what was happening and obviously couldn't go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Breaking news this morning, the United States has captured Venezuela's president and his wife.
What was your phone blowing up with? Was it news alerts
It's
or was it family or what?
News alerts, family, friends, all of the above.
Pretty much my first instinct was to call some friends, colleagues that I have here in DC that are Venezuelan. I'm telling you, this was like at 6, 7 a.m.
Wow.
But to my surprise, one of the friends I called, he even told me I've been up since yesterday night just because I've been getting videos or from my family, they're telling me this is happening. And I was just trying to get information.
Many people in the Latino community woke up to the surprising news. Nicolás Maduro, who has been in power since 2013, has been detained by U.S. forces. Meanwhile, here in the D.C. area, people have mixed feelings about what's going on.
What were Venezuelans here in D.C. telling you about the capture and the change in power there?
First, many were surprised, but actually thankful.
Yeah.
Many, at least the ones that I talked to from Venezuela,
Right.
they will tell me straight up, we're glad that President Trump did something.
And what was the reaction? Because I think it's not as simple as he's gone. We're happy. I think it's multifaceted, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Initially, I think most Venezuelans were happy. And I know when I say that, sometimes that's a surprise. It comes as a surprise because obviously there are a lot of questions about the legality of the operation and what took place in Caracas. But at the same time, Venezuelans have been living with this system for almost 30 years. And it's been really, really, really tough, really, really bad.
You covered a protest at the White House. Mm-hmm. How big was it?
Oh, wow. That one was big. That one was a good, more than 100 people. But what I noticed when I was there is that not many of them were Hispanic. And
What do you mean?
It was mostly white people.
What was the sentiment outside the White House?
Outside the White House, they were actually protesting against Trump action. They're complaining that he's overreaching, that this is imperialism.
The United States invades a country. Everything that they say, it makes it worse. I am tired of my country going into other sovereign countries and destroying things. It is time for the United States to stop this imperialist agenda.
But the Venezuelans that you'd seen earlier in the day weren't outside the White House.
Nope. I even remember seeing a specific group of people. I couldn't get to approach them in time because they were walking fast, and I was trying. I know this is more technical, but our photog was, doing live transmission to acquisition. But I saw a specific group of Latinos kind of approach the White House protest. They started listening, like they're like, no, this Trump, this is not doing, but pretty much things and certain words that I cannot say on TV, complaining about Trump. And they're like, oh no, this is not the one we want to be at. Let's go to the monument.
It's
And they started moving. I wanted to try to tell Tariq, but he was sending video to acquisition, and I was like, those are the ones that I need.
Yeah.
But the good thing was that I was able to talk with the staff here, and they were able to send a photographer to the other monument,
Right.
so we could then have
Both
sides.
Millions of people have left the country. Thousands of people have died. Families don't have loved ones any longer there for holidays and whatnot. So it's been really, really, really tough.
And it's repression?
There's been repression. There's crime. So when I say people leaving, they just couldn't take it anymore, and they just decided to leave the country. And when I'm telling you leaving, they're not leaving in, planes and whatnot. I mean, you have people who crossed borders, jungles, to make it to different countries. So it's been, to say it's been tough, it's an understatement, truly.
And I think we talk about the repression, we talk about the crime. What we don't talk about is the economics. It's a very, the reports are, a very difficult place to survive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. For the longest time, for a lot of Venezuelans, it was really hard to see how, with technology now, you can call family members and whatnot. And for a lot of Venezuelans, it was really tough to see how your family members just kept losing weight because there was no food, or it was not possible to buy food just because people didn't have the means to.
I think that says more than any headline I've read in years of Venezuelan coverage. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah, some experts would say it's gotten a little better.
Yeah.
But not really. I mean, it's really tough financially for a majority of Venezuelans.
How do you know?
Have friends there, family there.
You grew up there.
That too, exactly. Yeah, grew up there. Born and raised. Came here to the U.S. To go to college. Back in 2008, things were already pretty bad, but not as bad.
Yeah.
But I already knew that that we needed to try something else, and that's when I was able to stay here in the U.S. But I've been here since 2008. But yeah, born and raised. Came here for college, and then I stayed in the U.S. and after me came pretty much all my family. Everybody left, and that's pretty common for Venezuelan families. It's common, and it's sad. I know that here in the U.S., families, sometimes you have a cousin that lives in this state, and then you have an uncle that lives in this other state. That's not fairly normal back home. Most families live in the same city, and then all of a sudden you have family all over the planet that you can't see, and as I said, that's the overall experience of Venezuelans. Families separated for many, many years now.
We are in this weird moment where, depending on who you listen to, it's either about to be all fine and you can go back to Venezuela anytime you want, or it's years more uncertainty. Now, I'm not asking you to go in your crystal ball and pick which one it is, but how do you sort that out?
I think Venezuelan people are waiting to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
waiting to see what's going to happen because, as you said, Nicolás Maduro, he's no longer there. He's here in the U.S. But if you will, a lot of the people that he worked with are still there. So that's a big concern for Venezuelan people. So that's why most Venezuelans are waiting to see what's going to happen. And I think initially there was this feeling for Venezuelan people of happiness because, as I said, it's been almost 30 years of this system. But then I think reality quickly took over. And
the party didn't last long.
Yes, definitely not. Definitely not. I think people want to see what's going to happen.
Volver a Venezuela ahorita actualmente.
Maria Gonzalez manages a Venezuelan restaurant here in D.C. and says she would fear for her life if she went back to her home country. She was a coordinator in the opposition party. DHS tells News 4 applicants are only eligible for refugee status prior to entering a country, so people who are already here wouldn't qualify. We asked DHS if Venezuelans who were on TPS will now be subject to deportation, but they didn't answer that question.
Look, there are thousands of Venezuelans who are our neighbors here in the DMV, hundreds of thousands in cities across our country. What guarantee do they have that they'll be allowed to stay in this country if they haven't yet earned their citizenship?
Well, at this point, a lot of the Venezuelan people that had TPS or who came here through humanitarian parole, those programs have been canceled. So they really have, so they kind of live in limbo in two different ways.
People with no country.
Exactly, pretty much. They don't know what's going to happen back home. They can't go back home, but they can't be here. So as you said, they really have no nation to go back to at this moment.
As a journalist, do you think you're getting the answers you need in order to tell people who care about Venezuela what they need to know?
In terms of what's going to happen next? There's just a lot that we do not know. And
not for lack of trying.
Not for lack of trying, exactly. And look, it's so hard. It's really so hard. I think experts, analysts we've spoken to, nobody really knows what's going to happen next because it all depends. The fact that you have Rodriguez there now doesn't mean that other people might not want to, or might not want to collaborate with the Trump administration. So it's not only that it can be tough in these kind of situations as journalists rather to get answers, but there's really not one. And that's the other thing that it's tough as journalists and as Venezuelans. Nobody really knows what's going to happen next.
How much certainty do Venezuelans here in the DMV or anywhere in the United States for that matter have about how safe they are to remain in the country?
That is the key. There's no certainty. They are really confused. They are really worried.
Ernesto Castaneda works at American University, where he's a professor and the director of the Center for Latin American and Latino Studies.
If they have been here for a while, if they apply for a green card, or they become citizens like the first wave of Venezuelans, they're fine. But the ones that arrive with the special permits that the Biden administration implied for them to come legally using CBP-1 or because they had family members that vouched for them and were able to help them find a place to live and work, etc., and had work permits, they entered legally, but then that program ended. The Trump administration did not renew it, and many of them are being asked to leave already. The temporary protected status is expiring, and so far there have been no clear announcements from Homeland Security that they're going to reopen this program or they can apply in a particular way. The only solution will be they apply for asylum.
Why did the Biden administration feel it necessary to offer special status to people fleeing Venezuela?
That was a clear statement that the situation was very tough. In Cuba, in Venezuela, in Nicaragua, they were seen as states that were not very warm with the U.S. We don't have an embassy in Venezuela, and that it was objectively by people in the State Department, experts, that it was very hard to make a living economically in Venezuela, and if one was a journalist, if one was a politician from the opposition, etc., one's life could be at risk in those countries. So that's why the U.S. Started this legal process for many of them to arrive. And that worked actually really well. But I think it was very hard for the public to understand that this was a regulated legal migration. But the problem of the Biden administration program was that it was temporary. So the time has lapsed.
But to be clear, the problems that necessitated TPS a few years ago have not been solved in Venezuela by the removal of one man.
Not only do they continue, but they actually have gotten worse because now there's a lot of uncertainty.
How fair is that to people who came to this country with the promise that this was somewhat of a safer place for them, and now we're not honoring that promise?
Yeah, it's cruel, it's unfair. Many of them feel betrayed because many of those were even people that couldn't vote from Venezuela were campaigning for Donald Trump. They were happy about the removal of Maduro, but that doesn't mean that they can go back to Venezuela and restart their lives. Many of them want to eventually go back to Venezuela. Many of them were planning to be here only for a while, but the country, the situation in the ground in Venezuela hasn't changed enough for many of the people that I have been talking to that they are ready to go back tomorrow.
How many times have you been back?
I haven't been back since 2011, December 2011. Yeah. And as I said, that's fairly normal for a lot of Venezuelans. We haven't been able to go back home for...
Do you want to?
I would love to if the right conditions are there.
In 2011, when you went back the last time, did you have a wife or children?
No. I was already dating my now wife. And she's never been able to go to Venezuela. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You want to you want them to see the Venezuela you grew up in?
I do. Who doesn't want to see, your wife, your significant other in the places that you grew up in and your school, and try, well, I was going to say try restaurants that you used to go to, but those restaurants are not there anymore.
What is it you want your family to experience? Or what is it you miss? Where's the first place you want to go if you're able to go back to Venezuela?
Wow. I think my house. I haven't been back, as I said, in 14 years. So I think probably my house and the house that I grew up in, and the place where I spent a lot of time with my parents and my brother. That would probably be the first place.
Wouldn't we all want that for our wives and children to see where we grew up? I'm so thankful Alberto shared his story with us. It's not always easy to do. One more piece of context. On January 10th, nearly a week after DHS said Venezuelans here in the U.S. could return home to Venezuela, the U.S. State Department issued its strongest possible travel warning through its embassy in Bogota. Do not travel to Venezuela, that warning said. The advisory reiterated warnings in place for Americans since 2019, adding, as international flights have now resumed, U.S. citizens in Venezuela should leave immediately.